Okay, we are on page 120. We're learning how to solve two-step and multi-step inequalities today. It's basically the same as solving equations, like you've seen with the inequalities we've been doing the last couple days. So it really shouldn't be anything new. If you are understanding the equations part, you should be able to understand this. We did an extra worksheet a couple weeks ago, probably at this point, and that went over it. So hopefully this is going to be a bit of a review. Sorry if you don't like it when people pop their knuckles. If you heard me pop my knuckles. So we're going to start off on 120, and the first example we are going to do is 160 plus 4f is less than or equal to 500. Again, the goal is to isolate the variable on this. So we're looking at the left side and we want to get everything away from f. So the first thing we need to do is move the positive 160 to the other side. I do that by subtracting 160. And I get opposites to cancel, and I get 4f is less than or equal to 340. And then I have to get the f by itself. The 4 and the f mean multiplication, so I divide each side by 4. And I get f is less than or equal to, I want to say 85. And I'm right. That sometimes happens. I'm not going to graph these because I feel like by this point we've done 3 lessons where you've been graphing. You graph these the same way. If you haven't gotten down how to graph it, you need to come talk to me and not just rely on the video. So the next one is 7 minus 2t is less than or equal to 21. Okay, the goal still is to get that variable by itself. So I'm getting this side, so the t is alone. Positive 7, move it by subtracting 7. These cancel, and I get negative 2t is less than or equal to 14. Then I do the opposite, which is divide by negative 2. And remember, when we divide by negative or multiply by a negative, our sign flips to the opposite, and we have negative 7. Okay? Sometimes, just like with your equations, you're going to have to simplify or combine like terms or do the distributive property before you can really start getting your variable on its own. So this is the problem. Here we go, minus 2. So on this one, I'm going to look on the left-hand side, and I'm going to notice, or I should be able to notice, that these two are like terms because they're just numbers. So negative 4 plus a negative 8 is negative 12, which is less than negative 5c minus 2. Remember, the whole goal is to get the c by itself. So I'm going to be looking at this side and be moving everything. The opposite of negative 2 is positive 2, so we add 2 to each side. These cancel. Negative 12 plus 2 is negative 10, is less than negative 5c. Next step would be to divide each side by negative 5, because a negative divided by... So negative 10 divided by negative 5 is 2. Oops, not working. 2. However, I divided by a negative number, so I have to flip the sign, and then I need to rewrite that if I was going to graph it. So I would rewrite it like this, so we can follow our easy graphing rules. Okay? Let's look at the next problem. We have negative 3 times the quantity of 3 minus x is less than 4 squared. And then we have to do the distributive property first to get rid of those parentheses, which means I multiply the outside term by the first term, and then the outside term by the second term. I could also draw me some arrows like this. If you struggle with distributive property, you should probably come see me at an FOL, and we can work on that. So negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. Negative 3 times negative x is positive 3x. And that is less than 4 squared, which I'm going to just change that now to 16. That's a shortcut, that is fine. Now I'm looking at my left side, and I got to get my x by itself. So I need to move the negative 9 first, the constant. So I plus 9 to both sides. These cancel. And I have 3x is less than 25. Last step would be to solve for x by dividing by 3. Now, if you have to graph this, 25 divided by 3 doesn't really give you a good idea where to put that on your number line. So you could, when you have to graph it, say it is 8 1/3, and that'll give you some type of wherewithal of where you should put that on your number line that you make. So a little past 8, not quite 8 1/2. So I just smelled something burning, and I was making pasta salad because sometimes I love my family and make them dinner, which they don't always appreciate. And I am the cheapest person ever, so I buy quarter spoons, wooden spoons that are a quarter, and it totally was on fire, and I probably almost burnt down our house. And I don't think I would have been on anyone's good side for that. Okay, next problem. Sorry. 4x plus 1/2 is greater than 3/5. Why you gotta do this and not be common denominators? Okay. First thing we gotta do is we have to get x by itself, so we have to subtract 1/2 from both sides. Okay, opposites cancel, which leaves us with 4/5 x. And if this book liked us, we would have common denominators, but we don't. So we have to find common denominator of 5 and 2, which is 10. Okay. 5 times 2 is 10, so I multiply 3 times 2 and get 6. 2 times 5 is 10, so I multiply 1 by 5 and get 5. Then I have 6 minus 1, which is 1 over 10. The next step to this is to multiply each side by 5 over 4. These cancel, and 5 goes once and twice, and x is greater than 1 over 8. Okay. Another way to do this problem is to do like I showed you, that one day, it was September 7th, because I showed you today. If you have that problem, plus 1/2 is less than 3/5, and you don't want to do what I just did. You can multiply this whole thing by 10, okay? It cancels that out, and we have to multiply this first one by 2. It cancels that out, and we have to multiply this by 5. It cancels that out, and we have to multiply that by 2. So 2 times 4 is 8, so we get 8x plus 5 is greater than 6. And then we subtract 5 from both sides, and wow, that was a whole lot easier. 8x is greater than 1, divide by 8. My life just made so much more sense. So, you never actually have to work with fractions again. Wow. So I would do that. Multiply each one by the common denominator. It makes life a lot easier. You make a lot more mistakes when you're using fractions than when you're using whole numbers, in my opinion, which is not everything. To win the blue ribbon for the heaviest pumpkin crop at the country fair, the average weight of John's 2 pumpkins must be greater than 819 pounds. That's a lot. One of his pumpkins weighs 887 pounds. How'd you like to carve that one? What is the least number of pounds the second pumpkin could weigh in order for John to win the blue ribbon contest? So, remember when we are finding average, we first have to add and then divide, okay? So, we know he has 2 pumpkins. We know one of them is 887 pounds. And we have to add the weight of the other pumpkin, which we don't know, so we add X to it. But those together, to find the average, we would then have to divide by 2, okay? So, remember, average, add, then divide. These are the weight of the 2 pumpkins divided by 2. And it must be greater than 819. So 819 has to be less. My voice is not working today. So we can do the same thing. We can say that we're going to multiply this side by 2. And if we multiply that side by 2, we need to multiply this side by 2. These cancel out. And it gives us 887 plus X is greater than 1,638. And then we just got to solve for X. X. In the book it's a P. And we subtract 887 from both sides. And when we do that, these cancel because they're opposites. We get X must be greater than 751. So his other pumpkin must be greater than 751 pounds. So if you want to be done now, you can. If you don't want to be done, well, you can continue to do problems if you would like with me. We're going to do just 2 more. So the first one is 5/8 is less than 3/8 X minus 1/4. And this is one where we say, okay, the least common denominator of 8 and 4 is 8. So I'm going to multiply each one of these by 8 to make my life easier. And these cancel, and these cancel. And 4 goes into itself once and into 8 twice. So we end up with just 5 is less than 3x, because there's nothing to multiply 5 and 3 by because you canceled the 8 out, minus 2, because 2 times 1 is 2. Then you add 2 to both sides. These cancel because they're opposites. And you get 7 is less than 3x. Divide each side by 3. And 7/3 is less than x. Now, we're going to want to rewrite that, so x is greater than 7/3. Okay? It means the exact same thing, we just flipped everything. And if I'm going to graph that on a number line, I might want to change that to a mixed number and get 2 1/3, so I have some clue about where to graph it. One more. And then I have to finish dinner. 3 plus 2 times x plus 4 is greater than 3. So we're going to do distributive property here. So we get 3 plus 2x, because 2 times x is 2x, plus 2 times 4, which is 8, is greater than 3. We're going to look at this side first and see what we can combine. We can combine the 3 and the 8, so we get 2x plus 11 is greater than 3. The next step is to get the x by itself, so I'm looking here. Subtract 11, because we got to subtract the constant first. Those are opposites, so they cancel, so we have 2x. X is greater than negative 8, and the last step would simply to be divide by 2. And we get x is greater than negative 4. Alright? So, hopefully that was enough problems. It's just like your equations, except with an inequality sign. The only important thing to remember, besides how to solve them, the only difference between an inequality and an equation is if you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to remember to flip the inequality sign or you will get it incorrect. So have a great day.